Well, Christmas is once again just around the corner, and this year I thought I'd try something a little bit different. I've mentioned in passing once or twice the Great British Pantomime. That staple part of a British Christmas where between the months of November and January, but mainly December, men, women and children flock to theatres up and down the country to engage in what is probably one of the more fanciful traditions of the country. In essence, the British pantomime is farce and cheeky theatre adaptations of much-loved children's fairy tales and stories. Things like Sleeping Beauty, Snow White or Robin Hood are presented essentially as normally told, but the key difference is the absolute and total campy over-the-topness with which everything is presented. It's a big colourful show where every character is bombastic and the characters who are supposed to be bombastic are positively nuclear. Imagine, if you will, the most fabulous and over-the-top drag show you've ever seen in your life, and you're in the rough ballpark for the level of campy over-the-topness that Panto generally reaches. It's divine levels of campy over-the-topness at its most unrelenting. These often innocent and sweet stories will be liberally peppered with innuendo and double entendres designed purposefully to fly over the heads of the kids and to get awkward and nervous chuckles from the adults who know they may have some awkward questions to answer later from little Billy or Timantha. Equally, and in more recent times, there have been some variations on the Panto concept which have garnered mixed results. These include performing pantomimes based on more modern franchises, such as the Pirates of the Caribbean or Doctor Who, and somewhat more bafflingly, the concept of the adult panto, which I feel rather misses the point of pantomime. It's basically just your bog-standard pantomime, but solely aimed at adults. You see, panto is generally seen more as a kids' thing, with all the innuendo-laden jokes just converted into overt sex jokes with tons of swearing and in some cases mild nudity. If you thought having a load of people being manically up in your face and in full cocaine mode for roughly 3 hours was a bit much, the adult variants, where 90% of the audience and cast are like that and usually absolutely wasted on cheap vodka, are frankly insufferable and a little bit yikes, quite honestly. Anyway, you might be wondering why I'm explaining what pantomimes are, and that's because today we're going to be taking a look at 1974's Jack and the Beanstalk, a localised Japanese version of a very popular story often used in pantomimes. And I'm not sure how well travelled this story is outside of Europe, so I'm going to do a quick summary of the plot. Jack and the Beanstalk follows Jack, a teen farm boy who lives with his mother. The pair are on the verge of poverty, and Jack's mum tells Jack to go to market to sell their last cow to pay for basic living needs. Things look pretty grim, but while Jack's on the way to town, he's stopped by a mysterious traveller who offers to trade Jack his cow for some magic beans. Jack agrees, and when he gets home, he tells his mum what he's done, and she's furious. She scolds Jack and throws the beans out of the window before sending Jack to bed early. That night, however, the seeds sow, and in the morning, Jack wakes up to find a giant beanstalk spiralling into the clouds. Jack decides to climb the beanstalk, presumably just on the good vibes it's giving off. I don't think they ever actually make it explicitly clear why he does. And when he reaches the top, he spots a castle in the distance. After exploring the castle for a while, he eventually finds a magical harp, who warns Jack of an evil giant who lives in the castle, who eats humans and who's due back any minute. Jack takes the solid gold harp and stores it away, whilst also stealing several other golden items from the castle before the giant returns. After a short time, the giant produces a golden goose that can lay golden eggs on command. Jack hides for a while, but the giant eventually smells that a human is in his castle and begins searching. Jack goes to steal the golden goose. He manages to store it away with his other liberations, but the giant clocks him and a chase ensues as Jack races out of the castle, back down the beanstalk with the giant hot on his heels. After getting to the bottom of the beanstalk in record time, he quickly calls for his mum to bring him an axe, and as fast as he can, he chops the beanstalk down, causing the giant to plummet to his death, leaving Jack and his mum to celebrate their newfound wealth and riches with music and golden eggs for the rest of their lives. The story itself has been slightly revised over the years since its first publication in 1734, but those key beats have more or less kept the same. The version we'll be talking about today, however, is the Nippon Herald version, which, of all the versions of Jack and the Beanstalk, this one's probably the most out there that I've seen so far. So, the main key beats are all pretty much there. They've chosen in this version to make Jack a lot younger, he's basically a kid in this, and they've given him a dog companion called Crosby, who basically gets to do a lot of the physical comedy, visual gags, and helps to steer Jack in the right direction at regular intervals. Jack takes the cow into town and meets a mysterious stranger who, in this version, is quite obsessed with music, and then pretty much everything up to Jack climbing the beanstalk runs much the same as well. In fact, it's only at the point that Jack starts climbing the beanstalk that this version drastically differs from the original story. You see, whereas Jack's climbing the beanstalk is largely inexplicable in the original story, here they kind of give him a bit of a reason. You see, shortly after Jack comes outside to see the giant stalk, a mouse in finery appears and, using a series of bizarre squeaks and charades, manages to tell Jack and Crosby that there's something at the top of the beanstalk if they choose to climb it. They decide to follow the mouse's advice, and when they reach the top of the stalk, they arrive at the bottom of a well. Climbing out of the well finds them in the company of one Princess Margret, the princess, and soon-to-be queen, of Cloudland and its kingdom. Princess Margret has a bit of a dreamy, woozy quality about her, but she mentions that she's incredibly excited because tomorrow is her wedding day when she finally gets to marry the man of her dreams, the noble Prince Tulip. Jack fills her in with his personal life, and after getting to know each other, she invites him into the castle to meet Prince Tulip's mother, Madame Noir. Her name is slightly different in the English dub, but due to audio issues I couldn't quite grab what her exact name was. I believe it was Madame Hakuba, but I could be way off with that. Anyway, Jack heads into the castle, and while taking in the grandness of proceedings, he spies a portrait of the noble prince, only to find he looks hideous. A ghoul of a man who has a very bad aura. Princess Margret, though, is smitten, and a short time later we're introduced to Madame Noir, who equally has quite a strange vibe. A strange vibe that is later confirmed to be strange when the Madam reveals her true self to Jack once he's on his own. It turns out that the Madam is a wicked witch who arrived in Cloudland with her son Tulip with the express purpose of taking over the kingdom and becoming queen. To do this, she managed to worm her way into the kingdom before using her magic to transform the entire inhabitants of Cloudland into, admittedly, very well-dressed mice. Then she put a spell on Princess Margret that makes her think Prince Tulip is a dashing and handsome young man and not the sluggish, nasty oaf giant that he is. The spell has to be renewed each day, but the Queen has managed to work it into their routine, so it's largely gone unnoticed. And Jack stumbled in on this plan the day before the wedding is set to go ahead. While Jack's finding out about all of this, his dog has pretty much been given the same briefing from the mice. And just before the Madam can get rid of Jack, her giant son Tulip enters the kingdom hungry for some dinner. She tries to hide Jack, but Tulip sniffs him out almost instantly. While the Madam bickers with Tulip about saving Jack for the wedding reception feast, Jack manages to run off and reunites with Crosby and the mice, who reveal to Jack a secret treasure room, home to a golden harp that can only tell the truth, and a magical golden chicken that lays eggs on command. Why it isn't a goose in this version, I have no idea. Anyway, after another near encounter with the giant, Jack grabs as much gold as he can, and the golden chicken, and follows the mice down to an armoury. They plan to train Jack up to take on the giant, stop the wedding, and save Princess Margret. But in a somewhat refreshing turn of events, Jack says sod that for a game of soldiers, and basically leaves Crosby and the mice and heads back down with all the gold. After making his mother almost pass out with delight at how rich they are, things seem pretty good for Jack. But then, that old devil conscience kicks in, and he starts to think that maybe going to save Princess Margret needs to happen. So, with no time to lose, Jack and Crosby head back up the Beanstalk to crash the wedding, rescue the princess, and save the day, in a gripping climactic finale that, well, if you're aware of the story Jack and the Beanstalk, you probably already know how this is going to end. This was one of only 7 animated kids films produced by Nippon Herald Films. And in fact, this film was slap bang in the middle of their work in the field. And I've got to say, I haven't been this pleasantly surprised by an animated kids film since Christopher's Christmas Mission. What we have here is a film that I feel quite nicely enhances the original story. The original Jack and the Beanstalk story, as a short story, is pretty good fun. But adapting it into a feature-length picture, I think, is rather difficult, because that middle act is a bit wishy-washy. Acts 1 and 3 are pretty cleanly established, with Jack getting the beans and climbing the beanstalk, and then him escaping the giant and climbing down the beanstalk and getting rid of the giant. But the second act, where he's basically just pillicking about in the castle, robbing up the place, never really felt all that developed to me. What this film has done is not only added motivation to the first act to get Jack to climb the beanstalk in the first place, but it then adds an entirely new level of world building to the existing narrative with the introduction of Cloudland, Princess Margret and Madame Noir. It gives Jack a nice bit of character development, turning him from a feckless farm boy who's just in it to thieve into an actual brave hero who manages to save the day. It even adds some very nice all is lost elements that help to create a much more robust third act comeback. And most critically of all, the script for this thing is actually entertaining and funny. As in, there were multiple times through this where I actually laughed out loud, and multiple points where I was genuinely curious to see where the film would go next. I really enjoyed this one, and given how cheap the promo materials looked for this, I really wasn't expecting that much, honestly. For starters, the dialogue does suffer a little bit from it being an adaptation of a Japanese script. Inevitably, this has led to a little bit of over-explanation and over-complication of the dialogue in certain scenes. The humour in this has more or less been translated wonderfully into English. It never felt like the film ever lost any steam through the runtime. All the characters have genuine and well-developed personalities and characteristics that continue to develop as the film's runtime goes on. And with a newly written and more robust second act in place, the whole film feels a lot more stable as a feature film than it would have had those elements not been there. This script is zippy, keeps a good pace, and even the musical numbers, oh yeah, this is also an out-and-out musical, offer a decent opportunity to further develop the narrative of the characters in a fun and entertaining way. In fact, the only thing I can honestly pick on is the ending. Unfortunately, this is one of those films that just stops, rather than resolving its hanging threads. The script begins to set up that there's going to be more meaningful resolutions, and then just when you think that resolution is going to land, the film essentially kills the lights and tells the audience to go home. I mean, the ending we have isn't bad. It certainly didn't raise the blood pressure at all. It just left me kind of going, oh, okay, rather than, yeah! Which, after the roller coaster ride we'd just been on, would have really put the cherry on the cake. This film was written by Shuji Hirami and was then adapted by Peter J. Solmo. Shuji has 3 writing credits, pretty much all of which are seemingly either adaptations of manga or fairy tales. This was his first credit and probably his best known, with his last work being in 1976. As for Solmo, he has 3 writing credits, though one of those is unverified. And his biggest credit is probably that he adapted 52 episodes of Kimber the White Lion for Western audiences, with his last verifiable credit being the adaptation of this film. And a fine job he did of it too. On directing duties, we have Gisaburo Sugi, a serious talent in the world of anime with nearly 40 directing credits to his name in a career that started in 1961 and continues more or less to this day. He's probably best known for directing 33 episodes of the original Astro Boy anime. Though he's also responsible for a decent chunk of the various Street Fighter anime adaptations that have been produced over the years. And here, I think he does a really good job. I mean, anime direction is a different beast now to how it was in the 70s, but contextually, this looks really good and solid. There's a really focused creative vision being delivered in this film, and Sugi not only ensures that the action is at the front and centre of this film from start to end, but it's even little things like just giving the characters enough screen time to really let their emotions breathe. It adds way more weight and gravitas as a result. In fact, one of the few flaws with his creative decisions within this film is that I think it would have maybe been nice to see a little bit more of Cloudland. Basically, the entire film is set within and immediately around the castle, but we're told that Cloudland is a kingdom, though we never actually see anything beyond the castle walls. I don't know, even just a shot of one or two villagers in Cloudland rejoicing at the end would have been enough to satiate me, but the total lack of an outside presence in terms of the residents of Cloudland just kind of made me think that the castle was the kingdom and that was about it. I think had Sugi given this film just a little bit more presence from the people of Cloudland, it probably would have helped to sell the idea that Madame Noir becoming queen was a bad idea. Because the vibe this film puts across is that if Madame Noir becomes queen, she'll basically rule over Princess Margret, Tulip, a harp, a golden chicken and some mice for all eternity, and that's about it. To that end, the art style here, while a bit all over the place, more than serves its purpose. Jack's animation style is much more in line with more Western cartoons. Princess Margret looks like something drawn by Osamu Tezuka. Madame Noir looks like an extra from The Thief and the Cobbler, and Tulip looks like a cereal mascot. And yet, somehow, all these various art styles and consistencies, to me at least, really work in almost immediately setting up who these characters are and what their personalities are going to be like. Like, one glimpse at Jack and you can almost immediately tell he's going to be a somewhat cartoony and slightly cheeky young man. And the same applies to the other characters. Where the film really won me over in art style is in the third act, when things really start to go a bit absurdist and surreal. The Paperman wedding sequence in particular bordered on creepypasta levels of weird and unsettling, and the grand finale chase between Jack and Tulip positively reeked of Looney Tunes vibes. It was great. On the performance front, overall, I'd say I was happy. This film isn't without its shortcomings in the area. With some of the translations being longer than the original dialogue, there is the usual issues around voice actors desperately trying to cram in as much dialogue into the footage they have as possible, quite often resulting in moments where I feel so sorry for the voice actors who clearly need to catch their breath. But what I can say is that for a 70s voice acting team, this group are really good. They're, for the most part, no-name VO actors, but considering at this time VO work for Eastern film productions were often handled with the grace and dignity of a warm fart, I'm looking at you, martial arts dubs 1970 to 1995. Here, the team actually seem to be having great fun with the project. There's no duff performers, no dodgy takes. The actors delivered their lines with a believable charisma and animation that I genuinely enjoyed sitting through, and it really made me wish that this was the quality of the era rather than the outlier. Finally, the soundtrack. And like being hit by an oncoming truck, I did not see this coming. The score here is actually really nice. It's just got that weird, upbeat, folky come electronic sound, which is combined with a certain mania that ultimately makes almost all the musical numbers super fun to listen to, and even more entertaining to see enacted on the screen. This is a really upbeat OST, and even the instrumental tracks are lively, bright, and really help to pull you into the story as it's unfolding. I really dug it, in honesty. Jack and the Beanstalk was released in Japan in 1974 under the title Jack Tomame no Ki. It was later translated into English and released by Atlas Home Entertainment in 1976. It received multiple VHS releases from that point onwards, but I'm struggling to find an exact date for its initial release. The first date I can solidly confirm is for the VHS release that I own, which was put out by Video Gems in 1991. Though on the back of the box it incorrectly lists the film as being released in 1978. It then later received a DVD release in Europe by Monolith in 2014, and from what I can see, that appears to be the end of the line for this film. At the time of writing, it doesn't appear to be on any streaming services, which is a real shame, as it's a sincere and entertaining watch. Jack and the Beanstalk genuinely surprised me. Given how cheap my copy of the film looked from a box art perspective, I had very low expectations going in. I watched this with my partner, who was also quite anxious about watching this because she hadn't seen it since she was very young, and as a kid she loved it. So she was a bit worried that it wouldn't hold up. Needless to say, we both came out of this experience very happy. I can wholeheartedly recommend checking this one out if you want a flavour of the Panto experience. With a sharp script, nice fluid art styles, decent voice acting, and some genuinely lovely direction, this Christmas, treat yourself or your family and check out Jack and the Beanstalk. And I hope you enjoyed it in the same way I did.